Hey everyone, welcome to a new More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
I'm Jordan Smith, and for those that joined us during our SpongeBob miniseries, we want to thank you because we know it took longer than we had originally thought. Our plan at first was to go through all three of the first seasons and then the first movie in one episode, but then we just had so much fun talking about it that we ended up splitting it up. For at least today's episode and possibly more, we're going to do the same thing with a different show. Now, if you're like me, who grew up without cable, so you didn't have channels like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, you might have been like me and had a station called PBS Kids. And one of their most, if not the most popular shows in that lineup is what we're going to be talking about today, Arthur.
Yeah. Yeah. The animated series of Arthur was based on a series of kids' books by Mark Brown, who it all kind of started, if I'm correct, it started like after he had pretty much lost his job because the school he'd been teaching at had gone broke, and then he would make up some stories for his kids or something, and then he started the series, launching it in the late 70s, and then was approached about it being adapted into an animated series, which ended up running for more than 25 years, I believe.
Yeah, it ran from 1996 to 2022.
Yeah.
So really, if that show was still going, it would be one of the only shows aside from maybe like The Simpsons that is animated that had a longer runtime than SpongeBob.
Yeah. And it's been praised for, I think, just its honest look at growing up and its presentation of realistic situations, and that's kind of running throughout the series, and I think that helped it endure a lot.
And one thing I really respect about this show is that even though it is classified as a kid's show, it doesn't typically pull its punches, especially when it comes to more serious topics. Like they have somebody at some point in the show who gets cancer. They talk about death every once in a while, divorce, and their grandparents being sick, and so many other things, PTSD even.
Yeah.
And they try to explain it in a way that kids would still understand.
Yeah.
At the same time, they still explore what it's like to be a kid at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it all began, the TV series, with a story titled Arthur's Eyes, which I believe is based on the first Arthur book, Arthur's Nose. And it's the first of several stories in the TV series where the story is presented as a flashback, because it starts out, the cold open, with DW getting Arthur up out of bed late at night. And she assumes they have another brother that their parents didn't tell them about, because she saw a photo in a family album of a pre-glasses Arthur. And so, naturally, I guess being 4 years old, she didn't recognize him. I don't know. I wanted to ask, has that happened to you, Jordan, where, because I know you have glasses, where somebody saw you for the first time with glasses and they didn't recognize you?
I wouldn't say that they didn't necessarily recognize me or not. It was more like they were thrown off, especially if sometimes I showed up with them or without them. Like in our theatrical productions as of late, during theater season, I will, through somebody's help, acquire contact lenses because I feel like it's just easier if the glasses aren't there when I put on the costume and the makeup and whatnot. And sometimes I'll show up without glasses and they'll be like, wait, Didn't you usually have glasses on?
So they know it's you, I guess you're saying. They just maybe takes them a little longer to register.
Yeah, they definitely know it's me. They're just not used to seeing me with or without them, depending on who it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
But anyway,
oh, go ahead.
did you want to say something?
I did, but I didn't want to cut you off too.
Um, no, go ahead.
Okay. So, especially with some of these earlier episodes, you might be wondering what animal Arthur even is. Because for those that watch even one episode, you can definitely tell that most of the characters, pretty much all of them, are based on some form of animal. Arthur, it's hard to tell at first, but if you go back to some of those earlier books, you could tell that he's an aardvark because his nose is a lot longer. But possibly to appeal to the general audience that they're aiming at, they might have tried to make them look at least a little bit more human while keeping those animal features, like especially with ears or their jaw shape or something to that effect. So that's at least why I think these characters look a lot more anthropomorphic.
Yeah, it's a better design, more pleasant for me to look at. And so Arthur pretty much then goes on to pretty much off screen explain to DW the whole story of how he got his first glasses. The episode proper starts out, he is about maybe a year or so in the past. He's in math class, unable to accurately read numbers on the chalkboard, and kind of bugging Francine for help figuring out what they are, and that's kind of annoying her pretty fast. And he's kind of bombing at math, and then later in the gym, when he's playing hoops, he attempts a free throw, and it's about as big a fail as that one scene in Space Jam, which I think might have come out the same year. You know, the scene where Patrick Ewing sends the basketball flying into the popcorn guy.
I don't know if I ever actually saw Space Jam. I know I've seen clips of it, but I don't know if I've seen the whole movie.
Yeah. Well, it's on streaming now.
Okay.
So then the kids all go for a sort of routine eye exam in the nurse's office, and Arthur awkwardly fumbles on it. He can't read accurately. He's like, wait, is that a 7 or is it an 8? And so they send him to an eye doctor to get tested. And they deduce that he needs glasses, and he picks out a pair. Then comes back to school and is almost immediately picked on by Francine. But Buster, he has a refreshing reaction to this, Arthur's best friend Buster. He, instead of just straight up telling him, knock it off, which is probably the easiest thing to do, but instead he gives a little more logic to his approach, and pretty much tells her, some people need glasses to see, Francine, big deal.
Yeah, I can definitely respect him for that, especially since Buster's typically in the position of being the more naive character. But yeah, this episode I connect with in multiple ways. Like the whole glasses thing, of course. It didn't happen for me until I was older, though. And it wasn't until after my right eye started to go, because really my right eye is worse than my left. But thankfully, by the time I did get glasses, I was old enough that people weren't calling me names or saying something ridiculous like that. But at the same time, there were other things that I'd be made fun of, and I usually had at least one friend that stood up for me, or at least was just there for me when something went wrong.
Yeah.
So seeing this kind of thing happen, I was definitely able to connect with it quite a bit.
Yeah. And of course, naturally, he gets really insecure, really down, and tries a few times to get rid of the glasses, but somehow ends up finding them again. Then he decides to secretly ditch them and just go to school without wearing them. But it quickly blows up in his face because, he does have a creative strategy. He thinks he can just find his way to the correct restroom just by counting the doors, which seems like a perfectly logical approach, but it ends up blowing up in his face because without his knowledge, somebody opens a door or something and he goes into the girls' room by accident. And of course, girls are freaked out. But, and so yeah, it pretty much blows up in his face and he just kind of gives up, I guess. He tells himself, I guess he just has to live with being picked on.
Yeah, he did try to use his memory of the outline of the school, but like you said, it backfired very much. And like other episodes we'll get into, even though something happens to him that people like to mess with him over, they eventually adapt or learn that it's not okay to do that. That's one thing a lot of shows on PBS Kids did, is that they at least tried to teach good morals or good lessons, and that was one of them a lot of the time. And then part 2 of episode 1, it has a similar format to SpongeBob, by the way, where each episode had 2 stories, is Francine's Bad Hair Day. And this episode centers around school pictures, which seem pretty standard, but some of the characters take it very seriously.
Yeah. And Arthur even does like a Ferris Bueller in the cold open, saying, these are things you want to avoid doing, and kind of shows the mistakes his friends made and kind of the epic fails those resulted in.
And then, for the most part, everyone else at one point is just like, okay, we're doing school pictures, but 2 characters that we'll now talk about, Francine and Muffy. Francine's kind of a tomboyish character, whereas Muffy is a spoiled rich kid. Muffy tries to get Francine to look super elegant, and at first it's not really working out. In fact, it leads to a scene that for some reason I can still quote, where after she tries going to the hair salon and runs into Arthur and Buster, she asks them if they like it, and they just go, well, it's alive!
Yeah, Buster says that, and they just fall down, Arthur and Buster both laughing hysterically.
Just something about the way it was done, I just giggle at.
Yeah.
And Muffy not only forces her to do this, but then also limits her day-to-day life in fear that she might damage her hairstyle. And eventually, when they're playing a game of kickball against higher-ups in the school, like, she decides, you know what? I don't care how I look. I'm just going to go there as is, and I'm just going to have some fun.
Yeah. Francine pretty much does just sit on the bench and watch for a while, but it's not too long before she can't take any more of the other kids on their team messing stuff up, and she hits her boiling point and decides, that's it, I gotta step in, and she leads him to a comeback.
And granted, when she first literally jumps in, I do understand why the other team was bothered by that.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't even playing. That shouldn't count.
Yeah. Guy literally says that. Yeah, she wasn't even playing.
But, they eventually get to the photos. And they have some good jokes in there, like when Arthur takes the light reflects off his lenses, so he looks kind of freaky. Yeah. Buster takes pride in the fact that he was the one who burped last time.
Oh, yeah. That is probably one of the funniest parts. He just likes, hey, remember me? I'm the one who burped. Closes his eyes, got this confident, a finger up in the air, like, hey.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of the episode of SpongeBob where he was trying to get a good picture, but they had to put these giant fake teeth in to make it look like he was smiling.
Right. Right. And the
Yeah,
photographer's pretty funny. Kind of a, maybe a cliche joke. He's just like monotonously droning. Next. Next.
yeah, part of me wants to say that's kind of a stereotype thing for the school picture taker. Because some of them are like that, but then I've seen other ones that are very enthusiastic. Like there's one in Monsters University that is all excited when he takes Mike's picture. But yeah, it was a good couple of episodes to start off the animated franchise, at the very least. And at least with this episode, it was telling you, you should just come as you are. Don't try to change what you look like, especially if someone else is trying to pressure you into it.
Yeah. And Arthur and Francine do give each other some refreshingly nice compliments, on each other's photos. They don't just say, oh, you look good, you look great. No. What I really like is that they said, it looks just like you, which is probably one of the best compliments.
Yeah, Arthur and Francine, if these two were characters in more of like a high school setting, then they'd probably be written as characters that would eventually be in a will they, won't they situation. In fact, future episodes kind of tackle whether or not they like each other, but, because they're in third grade, they don't focus on that too much. But then we jump to part 1 of episode 2, Arthur and the Real Mr. Ratburn. And this is when they first jump into third grade and they're wondering what teacher they're going to get. But somebody who already lived through it, Prunella is her name, portrays him as this horrifying monster, essentially.
A magic vampire who eats nails for breakfast. Which is why I was thinking the nails for breakfast thing in that one No Weenies SpongeBob episode was probably like a callback or a reference to Arthur, which it might have been because Arthur premiered in '96 and SpongeBob in '99. I could be right, I could be wrong.
It could very well be true. It could also be one of those things that is used in stereotypical cartoons to exemplify how tough or scary somebody can be. But those are the only two examples I can think of. And yeah, this episode premiered about 3 years even before SpongeBob started. So yeah, she tries to scare them. They eventually find out that, yeah, he is the teacher they are getting. So they're fearing for their life. But then they eventually actually meet him, and yeah, he's a bit tough, but he's not that scary.
Yeah. They don't really like how hard he works them, but he's not as bad as they thought, apparently.
Yeah, he's definitely not a monster. He's definitely, from what I've seen of him and what I remember, he's a lot, I don't know if stricter is the right word, but some of the things he has these third graders do, it's like, really, third grade? This seems like a few years up from that.
Yeah, proactive was the word that I thought of, and especially when you compare him to another teacher at Lakewood Elementary, Sweetwater, who basically just does, like feeds them real sugary snacks or does stuff that's not really productive for the kids. But Mr. Ratburn is like proactively educating these kids the way they probably are going to need.
Yeah, a lot of them will be probably better for it in the long run. Granted, there is one student in their class who has the nickname The Brain, who is smarter than the average person at that age. But this show kind of connects with me in the sense that before I meet somebody, and I know I'm about to meet whoever this is, I tend to start picturing in my mind what they could potentially look and act like. Usually it's not to this degree of scary, but sometimes I wonder, are they going to be strict? Are they going to be patient or no? Like, what could possibly happen?
Yeah. And then, story 2b is Arthur's spelling trouble, styled Trubble, trouble, appropriately. And this is a story all about a spelling competition. And it starts out with Mr. Ratburn kind of telling everybody to study up for a big spelling test that will be in spelling bee style. And there will be a special winning prize awarded. He keeps a mystery. And so everyone studies, well, except for Arthur. He does kind of review one word for a while, but then Buster talks him into, going to the arcade, and he spends too much time goofing off before remembering about the spelling test. But somehow, just because he was able to remember how to spell that one word he kept going over, he was able to end up one of the two winners to represent their class in the all-school spelling competition.
This is definitely one of those instances where it definitely worked out in his favor, but definitely not something you should make a habit out of either.
Right.
Granted, you don't want to study too hard either, otherwise you're going to face burnout and you're not going to be able to focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, through friendly persuasion, he was neglecting studying up a little bit. Now, I don't know if you have, Seth, but I've never been in an official spelling bee. My brother has, but
I have
so
not.
much me.
I haven't.
You have not? Okay. But one thing that some of my classes did growing up, which is kind of what they did here, is they would have each person come to the front of the room and then spell a word. If they got it wrong, then they'd go sit back down, and then it was kind of like a last person standing type of deal.
Which is pretty much what you see in Mr. Ratburn's classroom in this story.
One thing I got to commend him on is that the previous episode, as we mentioned, portrays him as this really scary figure. But even in this episode, when Arthur is kind of not too confident in himself, it's his teacher that's like, yeah, I think you're a good speller.
Yeah, I think you can do it if you work hard, you prepare enough. I think you can do it.
It just goes to show, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Then we get to Season 1, Episode 3, and 3A is DW Wet. In this episode, she and her class, which is something you'll sometimes get a focus on, go to an aquarium, and it's here where we first see that she's kind of developing a fear of octopuses or octopi. I think they say either one works, but...
Yeah. And that's kind of a mystery to me.
I mean, I don't know if it really is ever fully explained why she has this fear. It's not something we necessarily need to know. It just seemed to come out of left field. Because up to this point, they'd seen other aquatic animals, and pretty much everyone else was afraid to some degree, especially if it was like a shark. And she was making goofy faces, and then that thing shows up, and then she runs. So eventually, after this is discovered, her father says, hey, we should go to, I think it's called Bear Lake.
Yes, yeah.
But of course, because of this fear that she's now established, she doesn't want to go.
Yeah. And she is super afraid to go into the water. Probably didn't help that Arthur pulled a prank on her earlier with a rubber spider in the bathtub.
Well, she did pick up on the fact that it wasn't real very quickly, but yeah, it's not too surprising that he would do something like that. I mean, I speak from experience for sure when siblings at that age tend to mess with each other a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, to the point where and DW was so mad she even said, "I hope an octopus eats him."
Yeah, it's like she's 4, she's upset, so she's not really thinking too rationally.
Yeah.
So it's definitely understandable where that comes from.
Yeah.
And this kind of makes me think of how they show each character's imagination. Like they'll do this sort of wavy flashback effect
Yeah.
whenever somebody's using their imagination.
Yeah.
And it kind of visualizes how a kid thinks in a way. Like granted, especially because it's a cartoon, some things will be over exaggerated.
Of course.
But it's not badly done.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think at one point my brother had one of the dream sequence transition music bits as like a ringtone or something.
Honestly, it is a good sound to use.
Yeah.
Kind of does sound like a ringtone now that I think about it.
Yeah, it kind of does.
But then we get to episode 3B, Buster's Dino Dilemma. And in this episode, instead of one of the classes going on a trip, one of the families going on a trip, it is Arthur's class again. They go to some type of state park.
Yeah, Rainbow Rock State Park. Yep.
That's the name. Okay, I couldn't remember the exact name of the place, but they go exploring around, and they hear about fossils being found, and eventually Buster actually finds one. Granted, it's small, but then he, for a little while, tries to figure out should he hide it and keep it for himself, or should he give it to the proper people?
Yeah, I feel like it's implied that he really believes he should be able to keep it since he found it, but the park ranger is saying when fossils are found, we keep them in our museum so others can see them, which is fair enough. But Buster really, really wants to keep it, and so he actually hides it in his pith hat, takes it home, and really, really tries really hard to keep it hidden. Like he buries it in a thing of marbles inside a shoebox. It's like a multi-layered burial system.
Yeah, I definitely get where both sides come from on this one too, because he's 8, 9 years old, something like that, and he finds an actual fossil. And I would be inclined to keep it myself, considering that's not something that happens every day.
Yeah.
But I also understand that it would be cool if it was in a museum for other people to see, especially if you come back later, see it on a shelf and think, I found that one.
Yeah. Yeah. You could still, kind of, I guess, get bragging rights.
Yeah, like some things can still happen that you can find. Like I went to I think it's called Herkimer Diamond Mines, where they had this spot where you could actually find some, and if you did, you could keep them.
So they're not as strict. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, Buster is so, nervous, about being found out. He won't even let himself pull it out of the closet or whatever. Yeah, I think the closet is where he keeps it because he's afraid, his mom might see it. And then he has this paranoid, if you can say that, nightmare of the park ranger and cops coming into his bedroom and finding a full-grown dinosaur in the closet.
Yeah, it's another example of the whole imagination thing where it can be over-exaggerated, but some kids will think that way.
Yeah.
Especially if they think what they're doing could be considered wrong. It's like, what's going to happen? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to go to jail? It's kind of like when SpongeBob and Patrick thought they stole a balloon, so they were about to either hide out or rat themselves out. And he could have potentially gone down that route as well, but no, it worked out in the end, because I think he did end up giving it to the museum, but it was named after him or something?
Or they put up a plaque saying that Arthur and Buster found it after they had called the park, and paleontologists had examined it, and then they put it on display.
Okay, yeah, I knew they did turn it in. I just couldn't remember what they did with it afterwards.
Yeah. And then episode 4a, DW's Imaginary Friend, which is apparently the introduction of a recurring character, Nadine, the titular imaginary friend here.
Yep.
And again, Buster is going with the Reed family, Arthur's family, on a trip to a theme park where they have an exciting new ride. But Arthur and Buster are worried that this whole imaginary friend thing is going to make them look bad. And so they try to come up with ways to keep DW out of the trip. They don't work, but they just try to, ignore her. Or Arthur tries to ignore her.
Keyword being try.
Yeah. So, yeah, honestly, I may have seen this only once years ago, so I do not have much memory of details from it. But I do not remember the Elwood City Limits podcast emphasizing the gag where they're talking about they supposedly have barf bags.
Yeah, I think the ride they were going on is kind of one of those ones that just spins around really, really fast.
Yeah.
And how fast is kind of up to the person riding, but they give you barf bags just in case. And while you don't see them using it, they're shown throwing the bag away afterwards, implying that, they definitely used it. But those are the kind of rides I just cannot do, personally. I get dizzy pretty easily, so I probably get nauseous real fast.
I didn't ride like a full-blown looping roller coaster until, honestly, I think I was maybe it was one of my trips down to Tennessee, and I rode the Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood Park for the first time, and to be honest, I was a bit nervous, but I kind of pushed through it, and it was kind of scary a little bit, with the gravity, the high speed, but it felt pretty good to do, though.
Yeah, I don't mind rides with speed. It's more like anything that makes my stomach turn, I find it hard for me to do, which is why I find it difficult to say do those really fast spinning ones or roller coasters with steep drops. They're definitely braver than I am in that regard, especially when they intentionally put the ride at the highest rotating speed. But the other element of this episode with the whole imaginary friend thing, what I do kind of like them doing is that they could just say, oh, she has an imaginary friend, and then we never actually see the character, but they actually, at least to our eyes, give her a physical appearance, which I guess would be their way of kind of bringing us into her world
Yeah.
and how she sees things. Because then it almost feels like, yeah, she's actually talking to someone.
Yeah. And we'll see her again plenty more times.
Oh yeah, she's not a one-off character. She shows up every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 4B is Arthur's Lost Library book, which takes a more creative than usual approach because it's split up into chapters, which are introduced by DW in a dramatic voice. Like chapter 1, so whatever title it is. And basically Arthur and checks out a bunch of books, a stack that it goes up as high as his head, if not higher. Yeah. Yeah. But then when he realizes he can check out one more and be at the maximum limit he can take out at a time, he gets the new book, The Mysterious Hand. So he rides home with all of these stacked in his arms, but without his knowledge drops that one mysterious handbook behind him. Gets through the rest of the books, but realizes he doesn't know where the mysterious hand one is. And so he guesses that somebody else must have taken it, and he enlists the help of the one student whom he would not expect to read a book of that kind, Binky Barnes, to help him out.
And we'll definitely be talking about this character more, but as kind of a precursor, Binky is kind of he fills the role of the class bully. He's still a good friend to a lot of these characters, but every once in a while he still tries to put on this tough guy persona.
Yeah. He's very protective of his image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the series that this book is from, I think it's called Scare Your Pants Off. I think it's supposed to be a parody of Goosebumps, but I could be wrong.
I think it is. Yeah, and there's a later episode that kind of touches on the kind of concerns that parents had about the Goosebumps series, and uses that as the focus for a story about banning the Scare Your Pants Off series.
Yeah, I can't remember which episode that is, but I'm pretty sure it's in season 1. So even if we don't get to it today, it'll probably be next week.
Yeah.
But I've definitely been in a similar situation before where I either can't find a book or realize that the turn-in date is very soon, or it was like the day before or something like that. So I start to freak out, trying to figure out what to do. Granted, when a book is late, they don't really charge you that much, but to a kid, like any piece of money feels like gold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and apparently the late fee for or the fee for losing this specific book that Arthur apparently lost is I think he said $15.
Well, I guess in a way that kind of makes sense, because I don't know if I ever ended up losing a book. I just turned it in late a couple times. But I guess it would cost more to fully replace the book.
Yeah. Yeah. But eventually, after one of multiple, arguably paranoid fantasies, like or in this case of Arthur being grabbed by a hand, identified as the long arm of the law, and being chained up in his bed, he finds out that someone else actually turned it in, and it was Binky, whom under duress admits he was the one who found it on the ground. but he just didn't want Arthur to know it because he didn't want to be laughed at.
Which is just yet another example of him trying to maintain his image, as you said. And then we get to Season 1, Episode 5, Part 1, Arthur's Pet Business. This is before Arthur's dog, Pal, comes into the picture. At this point, he's telling his parents he wants a dog. But his parents say that he can only get this dog if he shows that he can be responsible to the point where he can take care of a dog. Because that is a lot of responsibility, a lot of money.
Sure.
And it's not as simple as bring a dog home, pet it, feed it, and that's it. So what he decides to do, as the episode's title implies, is run a pet business, specifically pet sitting for other people. And it quickly has not issues necessarily, but one dog that he's taking care of seems to constantly be cranky and upset regardless of whatever he does.
Yeah, it's got to be a tough place for anyone to be in. Like nothing you can do, can make them better or happier.
Yeah, and at least when I was a kid, if a dog was constantly growling whenever I was near it, or if a cat was hissing whenever I got near it, I would be genuinely shaking a little bit, because it's like, what did I do? I don't want to be hurt by this dog that seems angry with me. But in this case, the dog wasn't necessarily irritated with him, but if I recall correctly, while he was taking care of this dog, it had puppies.
Yeah. Eventually, Perky temporarily disappears, and then Arthur finds her with a newborn litter of puppies. And the owner offers one of them to him to keep. And he takes one as his own and names him Pal.
So if you see later episodes with Arthur's dog and then come back and see this one and wonder why she looks so similar to Arthur's dog, that's why, because that dog is Pal's mom.
Yeah.
And then there is another episode that we'll get to eventually where he writes a story for class of how he got the dog, which I guess is kind of like an episode recap of sorts, but with a goofy spin.
Yeah.
But that's later.
Yeah. And then there's DW the Copycat, which is focuses on the more savage side of Arthur's younger sister DW. When she really wants something, or she's real bitter or resentful about something, she can be, at least in a case like this, I guess, pretty passive aggressive, because DW is trying to get Arthur to play with her, do stuff with her, and so she tries maybe one or two or so of the activities he's into, but they just can't seem to enjoy anything together. And DW is like, you never want to do anything with me. And Arthur says, well, that's because the stuff you want to do is all boring.
And then they kind of go through, not to keep bringing it back to SpongeBob, but they kind of go through a similar phase of the episode where Patrick was trying to win an award, and he does so by dressing up like SpongeBob and doing everything that he's doing.
Including wiping out on the floor, breaking a dish, even going taking it super literally.
Yeah, so she ends up starting to copy him.
Yeah.
And even dressing like him.
Yeah. but this kind of ruins things potentially for Arthur because one of his friends is supposedly planning a party, and the host is not quite comfortable with him being there because he figures DW will probably tag along and be an embarrassment. And so he desperately begs DW to knock it off, quit copying him. And this shows how savage DW can be. She kind of replies back pretty sarcastically. Oh, so you prefer I do boring things instead? And Arthur says, all right, I'm sorry, I take it back. And DW does agree to quit it out.
Yeah, she is often compared to Caillou in the sense that she's this very bratty 4-year-old who is a bit of a whiner. Now, I would still say that she's better than Caillou is, because for one, she's not constantly throwing tantrums. She does learn lessons, and her parents, at least occasionally, will discipline her.
Yeah, I'd say she's better too.
Yeah, between the two, I'd definitely go for her any day.
Yeah.
And then episode 6, part 1, Locked in the Library. And this is an episode where Francine comes back into the picture, and she's working with Arthur on an assignment, but at this point, they've already gotten frustrated with each other because apparently he called her marshmallow, or at least she heard that he did.
Yeah, apparently he didn't say it to her face, but she at least maybe heard a rumor that he had told everyone that she looks like a marshmallow because of a certain sweater she had on. And you could make the case it's technically Arthur's fault in the first place, but Buster kind of makes the situation worse when Arthur is kind of struggling to respond to the questioning. Buster chimes in, yeah, remember? She was wearing that weird sweater? And then Francine goes... Yeah, and then Francine goes, you better apologize or else.
And then, as this title also implies, because a lot of titles of episodes for this show will kind of tell you what the main plot point is.
Yeah.
So they fall asleep while they're in the library working on this assignment, and they end up kind of splitting up a little bit because they're so fed up with each other. But then they fall asleep, and when they wake up, they're stuck in the library, which is going to be that way for the entirety of the weekend.
Yeah. So they're there in the first place because they have a team project that everyone is doing in pairs, where basically they have to research a hero and give a presentation about them, which in itself sounds like an interesting project.
And eventually, of course, they do make up and everything's fine, but while I've never been locked in a place, I definitely have gotten lost.
Yeah.
And separated from whoever I was with at the time. And as a kid, that can be terrifying.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I heard one podcaster say, this would not realistically happen if they were just, out in the open as, at least Arthur is on a couch out in the open when this happens, when he dozes off. Because, the people who check all around, cleaning people coming in after hours, but if it were more realistic, I guess we wouldn't have a plot.
Well, yeah, because, again, it's a cartoon. They're going to take some liberties.
Yeah.
And even live-action movies will do that every once in a while. Like, if you watch the movie Elf, not to get too far off topic,
yeah.
When he's in the department store and he's kind of sneaking around, setting up this display for the next day,
yeah.
Somehow, they show that they do have security there, but somehow they don't seem to see or hear any of this. So sometimes there is a bit of a suspension of disbelief that is used in order to push the story forward.
But eventually, after having another argument, after trying to escape from the library, the two kind of go off separate ways. At one point, Arthur, I guess, hallucinates a little bit and probably assumes that that a turkey meal in a recipe book is food right in front of him, and he tears out the page and eats it.
Yeah, that kind of pokes fun at other stories, like, I don't know if Castaway is the best example, but like if somebody's in a desert maybe and they're running out of supplies, they'll start to hallucinate water or something in the distance. But yeah, he started going a little crazy there, but they eventually turned out okay.
But then he overhears screaming, not knowing it's coming from a movie, and assumes that Francine's in trouble, so he rushes to rescue her. And then they have a little bit of another argument after that, but then Francine, pretty much is friendly to him again, and is forgiving because he was concerned for her, and they're snacking on food from the staff lounge, but then they eventually get found and rescued from the library, and then because of the unusual situation they were in, they forgot all about the assignment, but they kind of improvise and kind of talk about the situation they had in front of the class, and how it kind of taught them something.
Yeah, and kind of a demonstration of how even when two people aren't getting along, deep down they still care for each other.
Yeah.
Then part 2 of episode 6, Arthur Accused. And Arthur is, in fact, being accused here. In this case, he's being accused of stealing a bunch of quarters that were going to be donated to a fire department so they could get their own dog. And this episode kind of shows what happens when you jump to conclusions. Because if you falsely accuse somebody and then discipline them despite the fact that they didn't do anything,
or that they don't even have evidence,
yeah, it can really ruin their life. And even today, that's still a very prominent issue. So the fact that there's an episode in a kids show centered around that idea from about 30 years ago at this point just shows how timeless a lot of these episodes still are.
This is another episode or story that is presented as a flashback because it cold opens with Buster breaking the fourth wall. And he's telling the audience about his first ever detective case. And so what happened was, after Arthur collected everyone's donations, he went to drop them off in the school kitchen and tried to get Mrs. McGrady's attention, but he couldn't. She was on a phone call, so he just left him on the counter and hurried to go to the arcade with Buster. But then, because as the kitchen lady, Mrs. McGrady, said that she never got them, and because Buster again opened his big mouth for the second story in a row, talking about blowing quarters on a pinball game, the principal and secretary naturally get suspicious that he stole the donations, and they give him a week's detention and ban him from attending the upcoming picnic.
Which, as a third grader, again, who didn't do anything, that would destroy him.
Yeah.
But Buster once again stands up for his friend, even though he kind of, as you said, made it worse.
Yeah.
And goes around trying to figure out what happened to the quarters. And he actually does figure it out.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that Mrs. McGrady did get them, but even she didn't realize it. and ended up accidentally mixing them in with the dessert she was making.
Yeah.
And I think there is the occasional episode where Buster's detective persona does return, but not as much, especially once they introduce a character named Fern, who also is kind of a detective enthusiast.
Right, yeah. And she likes Sherlock Holmes.
That's one thing that's kind of interesting, too, because we pointed out how Scary Pants Off could be a parody of Goosebumps, but there are several real-world things in this cartoon world.
Yeah.
And Sherlock Holmes books are one of them, along with even somewhat more obscure ones like Captain Underpants. But there are a lot of real-world elements in there. And now we get Season 1, Episode 7, Arthur Goes to Camp, being Part 1. And as it implies, he goes to camp, and he's sending postcards and such. And it turns out while he's there, there's a bit of a rivalry between the guys and the girls, and they're constantly competing or pranking each other. And then, while I don't remember too many examples, I think one of the pranks that were pulled was they tried to convince the other group that there was a bear.
Yeah, I don't really remember any of the jokes, honestly, and I think I only saw this episode maybe once as a kid.
Yeah, this is definitely one I'm less familiar with, but I do remember them kind of pranking each other, and I think somebody, I forget who, would use this bear paw print outline on a stick to make it look like a bear had just been walking through there, or something to that effect. But yeah, it's an episode that I'm much less familiar with. But then Part 2, not much better with the familiarity, but I do kind of remember some aspects of it, called Buster Makes the Grade.
Yeah.
And Buster is in a terrible predicament because he's warned that if he does not pass this next test, he might not move on to the 4th grade.
And it's pretty evident as you see the episode, he's not that motivated, or he can't stick to good study habits, though the other kids, Arthur, Muffy, Francine, and I think maybe Binky as well, really try to coach him, teach him, stuff in math and reading and stuff, but it pretty much blows up in their faces.
Yeah, but it still shows that, especially when the chips are down and somebody's in a major dilemma, their friends will come together to help them out. Even if it's somebody as typically lazy as Buster can be. But now we get to Season 1, Episode 8. This one is definitely a bit more familiar, and this was set up in the pet business episode, Arthur's New Puppy. And in this episode, Arthur officially has the dog that he wanted for a while, and he had to work to prove that he could take care of it, and he names him Pal. The problem is, this puppy is causing some issues.
Right.
And he's starting to wonder, is he actually capable of training this dog? And if he can't, then what's going to happen to the dog?
Yeah. So he had to prove he could take care of one in order to get one. Now, in order to keep it, or him, I guess I should say, he's got to prove that he's worth keeping around.
And it kind of dives back into the whole responsibility thing. And really, it does somewhat accurately demonstrate that puppies especially can be difficult because they haven't learned anything yet, so you gotta train them from the ground up. It's not like when you adopt a dog that's already a couple of years old, for example, and has been taught a lot of things by the previous owner, so you already have something to work with. And for a third grader, that especially can seem like a lot of work. But as you see him throughout the rest of the series, Pal is a mainstay, and Arthur does succeed in keeping him around.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a couple of fun moments, like when the family or the parents are indefinitely or temporarily moving Pal into their garage, and Arthur is trying to find the key to the garage, and it cuts away for a second to Pal, well, literally like smirking.
I don't remember that.
It's kind of amusing. But then there's also a dog training montage later that seems to pay a little homage to Rocky with them going up the steps. I never actually watched the film, but of course I know of that moment pretty well.
Oh yeah, a lot of people, whether or not they've seen Rocky, they know a few things about it, like the famous theme song that goes with it, the scene where he climbs up the stairs. A lot of people know about the statue of him where they hang football jerseys off of it constantly. And if nothing else, they at least know that Rocky in these films is a boxer.
Yeah, right.
Then we get to part 2 of episode 8, Arthur Bounces Back. And this episode shows him wanting to get a product known as moon boots, which are basically these shoes with springs on the bottom so that you can jump higher.
Yeah.
And kind of like with the pet sitting thing, it centers around him learning about responsibility and earning the thing that he wants. So he has to find a way to earn the money, which is not that easy to do.
Yeah. One neighbor comes over, assuming they're selling things, apparently, and offers to buy a necklace from them for the amount that the boots cost.
And while I don't remember most of what happens in the middle of the episode, like how he gets the money and how he winds up with the moon boots, he does eventually get them, and they work as advertised.
Yeah.
A lot of products in our real world, they'll definitely try to make the product seem as exciting as possible to entice you to buy it. And I think there was at one point a product very similar to the moon boots that we had in real life, where you would put on these shoes and they were very springy in some capacity. But I think they were built in such a way that they were recalled due to injuries or something to that effect. I don't remember what they're called, but it was very similar in style. So at least he was using them, and they actually worked. He wasn't getting hurt, I don't think.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if this was something he envisioned doing with them or if he actually did this or both. But I remember him talking about using leaves, or not using leaves, using the moon boots to get leaves that are higher up in a tree.
Yeah, I think I saw that at the end.
Okay, so that was something he did, as opposed to envision. Or, again, could have been both.
Yeah. But then, story 9A is Arthur babysits. Let's take basically, this is the thorough introduction of the infamous Tibble twins, who attend preschool with DW, and they're known for being crazy, rowdy, hyperactive kids. Yeah, and some of the stuff they do is pretty funny to watch in the show. But basically, DW pretty much challenges Arthur to babysit them at their house, thinking he can't do it. He doesn't realize how much of a handful they are. And she's right. He pretty much gets more than he expected, and pretty much really has a tough time handling them.
Yeah, I'm picking up on how season one, especially early on, seemed to really want to write stories about Arthur needing to be responsible in some capacity. Up to this point, it's mostly been with animals. But here, it was with these two really obnoxious kids. And he was notified ahead of time from both his own sister and somebody else, I forget who. They were basically telling him, do not do this. Yeah. This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And even though he tries to assume authority, considering he's older and bigger, it, for the most part, does not work out very well.
But eventually he's able to more or less scare them straight by improvising a scary story about a character he makes up called the Swamp Thing. Which is
funny, because I think either Marvel or DC do have a character by that name.
Yeah. The Swamp Thing?
Swamp Thing or Swamp Creature or something like that.
Yeah. So, close anyway.
Yeah.
Then 9b is Arthur's Cousin Catastrophe, which is primarily set at an extended Reed family reunion. And so like aunts, uncles, grandparents, distant relatives, they all are basically barbecuing and playing games with the main Reed family. One of those guests is Mo, a cousin of Arthur's whom has been rowdy with him when they've seen each other in the past, and so he spends the whole day pretty much trying to stay hidden from her while everyone else is having fun. But then, when a thunderstorm hits and everyone goes inside, Mo is now playing the piano, and Arthur's kind of helping him out, and through a conversation, she says, I've been looking for you all day so I could show you how my learning has progressed. And she basically says, it's basically implied that she's only rowdy because it's her way of being playful, because she enjoys being around him.
Yeah, I definitely connect with this episode a bit, because at least for a while, when the 4th of July would come around, my family would go to this holiday celebration / family reunion type of thing, and there were at least one or two cousins that, at the time, I didn't always look forward to seeing, because they like to be a bit roughhousey, like they didn't always know their own strength or anything like that. They weren't necessarily being mean, but I did not typically enjoy being around them. But then, as it kind of happens with this episode, at this point they've grown up a bit and they eventually get along. And that's kind of what happened with my family. So the fact that they managed to write an episode very similar to how I've experienced it, it's like I definitely relate to it.
Yeah. And that's followed by Arthur's birthday, which I remember mostly from how the story was told in a CD-ROM of the book, one of those interactive CD-ROMs that Living Books came out with. Was one of those things where if you put it on a certain mode, you could click things around the page, and they would do some kind of animated thing. But I also saw the TV episode as well. Anyway, so Arthur's planning a birthday celebration at his home. But the problem is, it's going to be the same day as Muffy's. And so everyone's trying to decide, okay, we can only go to one. Which one do we go to? But Arthur and Francine come up with a clever idea to sort of merge both parties into one. And they do it kind of a sneaky little, make it like a little surprise for Muffy. And so now everyone's together, everyone's having a great time. And it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I definitely remember having the exact same CD-ROM interactive thing that you're talking about. And I don't remember too many of the different interactions you could do, but I do remember you would click on one of the characters, they would have both invitations in their hand, and somebody next to them would be like, which one are you going to? And then they just move their head back and forth really fast trying to figure it out. But yeah, I had that. I think it was one of the physical books I had as well. And then this might have been one of the first episodes I remember watching as well. Yeah. Probably because it shared the same name as the other things. It's definitely a really sweet episode because it starts off with some of the characters being divided because they're trying to figure out who they like more, who they should go with. And then, yeah, they really do care about each other. So, like, why don't we just mush them together and make one big party out of it?
Yeah.
And when they pull it off successfully, I think Arthur's mom says something like, next year we'll do the same thing, but we'll do it at your house next time.
Yeah, at the Crosswires, yeah. Yeah, I remember that from the end of the book, yeah.
And I mean, Muffy's a rich kid. She has the space, so it wouldn't be too much of an issue.
Huh. No, I think a lot of those kids would die for that.
Oh, yeah. At least when I was growing up, the rich kid was usually among the more popular ones. So that would not surprise me much at all.
Yeah.
Then episode 10b, and this might be, given the time, the last one we talk about today, but it is called Francine Frinsky's Superstar, which might be a reference to the musical Jesus Christ Superstar.
By Andrew Lloyd Webber, the composer of the last show we did, Joseph.
Yep. Granted, I don't know when that musical came out.
Yeah.
But I would assume it was before this episode.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
But the premise is that there's a school play going on, and Francine kind of gets the short straw, as it were, when it comes to what role she got. And her classmates are like, no, please give her something good. Give her an important role. And it pays off at first because she is cast as one of the lead roles.
Yeah.
But this is one of the times where even though something good does end up happening to somebody, it does still cause a conundrum in that now that she has this big role, she lets it go to her head.
Yeah, she's taking things too seriously, even foregoing social activities to, study more about the real life person she's playing, which is Thomas Edison, for those who care. And studying about inventions and taking caring so much about everything being accurate or realistic that she won't even let Buster's light bulb helmet have air holes in it.
This is a similar episode to one later on where Buster becomes the director for the play/musical that they're doing about the history of Elwood City. And he kind of lets it go to his head as well. where he wants everything to be exactly as he envisions it, even if it's not accurate, historically speaking. Uh, but with her, she wants it to be so historically accurate that it causes other problems.
Yeah, like Buster literally suffocating inside that helmet because there's no holes to breathe through.
It's like he tries to go with it, but he's having difficulty breathing. And eventually they do find a solution so he's not actually going to suffocate.
Yeah, yeah, they do a sort of, yeah, you could say this is immature, but what they do when Arthur tries to reason with her and she's like, they're just jealous. Yeah. They concoct a sneaky little plan to. It's passive aggressive, really, what they do. They concoct a plan to deliberately goof up the dress rehearsal. And it's pretty funny funny the stuff they do, like Arthur pretending to be a recording for operator busy phone signal, which is probably the funniest part of the whole thing. All operators are busy. Please hang up and dial again.
It's like this moment with Goofy in the Disney's Three Musketeers story that had Mickey, Donald, and Goofy in the titular roles, where Goofy's just standing there, mouth agape, eyes half closed, and when somebody puts an ear to his head, you just hear like the dial-up sound, and then, we're sorry, the number you reached has been disconnected.
And then Binky, who's playing the train in the Great Train Robbery, is doing these hysterical onomatopoeic chugga chugga choo choo. That's a part I think is funny.
It's wonderful how creative these episodes can get, especially in scenarios like this.
Yeah.
That could easily be a good comedy bit, like their own version of the play that goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like the Goes Wrong show.
Yeah, there actually is a play that works that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, eventually after this goofed up play is through, Francine's kind of having a meltdown in the dressing room. Arthur is finally able to break through to her, say, it's not just your show, it's everyone's. And Francine, I guess, kind of thinks about it for a little bit, and you know what? Yeah, I'm sorry. And then they have the official performance, and it goes off without a hitch. Everything's good again, for the most part.
It goes to show, and we can speak from experience, that regardless of how big or small your role is, each one is in some capacity equally important.
Yeah, it's like the old show business saying, no small parts, only small actors.
Yeah, basically. Because you could have this phenomenal actor up there, but if they're by themselves up there with no one helping them, or if everything else is going awry, they're not going to look as good. So it really is the combined effort of everybody involved that'll make the show work.
Yeah.
And I especially learned that when I was in college and I did some classes where I worked behind the scenes for different theatrical productions. It opened my eyes even further just how much work goes into a play or a musical or something to that effect. Because it's not just what you see.
Right.
There are a lot of things that you don't see that allow everything to happen. Like there's the people managing the sound, the choreographer, the bands that are often in a pit where you can't see them, the people moving the curtains, the props, etc. So much. And even if one of those things is out of place, it can cause everything else to fall apart.
Yeah. I think I learned basically the same thing from my experience with Artists Unlimited. Seeing, the organization that it takes and, the hard work and even I've gotten to get glimpses of some of the set construction process, and even in just the hours and weeks of learning technique and melody and scale and all that stuff you kind of need to be able to do. It's I was a spectator merely for years before that, but now that I've been on the other side and actually been on the stage, I think I have much more respect than ever for how difficult it is for anyone, talent, crew.
And now you're kind of in a similar position to Francine, where you've got a lot of people behind you rooting for you to get this big role, whatever the case may be, depending on the show.
Yeah.
Just don't let it go to your head.
Oh, yeah. Definitely better watch out. Yeah.
No, I know you wouldn't let it go to your head at all.
Just, yeah, well, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Sure.
So, I think, because we've gone on so long, that's going to do it for now, but we'll be back with more of Season 1 next time. Until then, you can stream us on YouTube and YouTube Music. Tell us any of your thoughts, ask any of your questions you'd like, and, say what you have to say.
Yeah, if there's other seasonal TV shows you want us to look at eventually, or other film franchises, or anything of that nature that you want us to talk about, or you want to know what our thoughts are on them, please let us know those. When it comes to Arthur, did you grow up watching it? Were there episodes that you liked or really didn't like? Feel free to share with us, and it might even be featured in a future episode.
Yeah. Well, until next time, everyone take care.
So long.